Good evening. My name is Rob Rosine, and I'm a Public Information Officer with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3. Thank you for joining us this evening for this evening's Dixie Fire West Zone Community Briefing for August 22nd. If you have any questions for our speakers, please submit them in the comments section below, and we will address them with our speakers after their presentations. Currently across California, firefighters continue to make progress on 13 large active wildfires burning across the state. Currently, we have 13,000 firefighters working on the front lines, and we remain prepared for more wildfires due to the current weather and drought conditions. This includes numerous air assets that have dropped more than 10 million gallons of retardant so far this year. Wildfires in the state have burned more than 1.5 million acres so far. It's an increase of nearly 600,000 acres versus the same time frame last year. Over the last 39 days, the Dixie Fire has consumed 724,110 acres. It's currently 38% contained. Currently deployed to the incident are 6,001 personnel, 429 fire engines, 211 dozers, 99 crews, and 19 helicopters. The Dixie Fire has impacted the lives of residents across 5 counties, including Butte, Tehama, Plumas, Lassen, and Shasta. The next news, I'm happy to report that the number of evacuated residents has been reduced to 5,195. That's a reduction of approximately 20,000 residents. Of those who are evacuated, 299 are currently staying in 5 temporary shelters established around the fire. Our first speaker this evening will be incident meteorologist Joseph Goudsworth.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Last time we talked, a couple of nights ago, we were talking about some increasing winds. Well, those increasing winds did occur, and I'm glad to say, for at least a few days, we're not going to have to worry about any strong winds. We're going into a rather quiet weather pattern over the next couple of days. We're still going to see that broad southwest flow of air in the upper levels of the atmosphere, but it's not going to be overly crazy. We're just going to see generally light winds that are typically going up canyon and down canyon, that terrain-driven stuff that we've all been so accustomed to over the past couple of weeks. We're also going to see temperatures pretty close to where they're supposed to be for this time of the year, and not looking at anything really, really dry for our humidities, pretty much in the lower teens during the day. But, and there's always a but, as we progress towards the end of next week, we are going to see another upper level ridge of high pressure build in, and temperatures will be increasing towards the end of the week. But in the near term, the biggest limiting factor, once again, is going to be the amount of smoke. Where the smoke does clean out, even momentarily, we could see those winds pick up just a little bit, so we'll definitely be watching that over the next couple of days. But to summarize, we're not looking at any real major fire weather concerns over the next couple of days. Basically dry, warm conditions will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Our next speaker will be fire behavioral analyst Brian Newman.
Good evening. So let's start with the map here. It's our newest updated perimeter, and we'll talk about the fire behavior aspects that we saw today across the fire. So first off, we had quite a bit of smoke over the fire this morning, which really put a damper on the fire, really moderated fire behavior to begin the shift. Overall, as that southwest wind came over the fire today, we did see some increase in activity across the fire. Over on the far north and west portion of the fire near the park, we did see some uptick in activity, especially down in the Ice Cave Mountain area, Lost Creek Plateau. There's a pocket in here that's burning out, and so we saw some activity there, a couple columns come up in that area, but nothing threatened the lines. It just started moving north and westwards, more interior towards the fire, but that is an area that we're going to continue to see some activity on the fire as we come in the coming days. Going further north into the national park area, this part of the line still is burning out here in the heavy timber, heavy topography, lots of dead and down fuels out there. So lots of activity in regards to smoke columns. It's continuing to move to the north and to the east, not at a real high rate, but it is steadily marching to the north and working its way through the really heavy fuels up there. Coming around the Butte Lake area, we did have an uptick in activity first thing this morning in that area, and it did challenge the firefighters' lines in those areas. We had to call them stand up and start burning more actively, making some short, intense runs up the slope in those heavy fuels and with a little bit of wind on it. We saw that for most of the day today. That's where we had most of the activity in the northern part of the fire, and they did have to readdress some of their strategies based on that fire activity they saw today. Coming down over near Silver Lake, the heat there is just well interior. Nothing's threatening the lines. Activity is still on our infrared sensors, but it's well within the interior right now, and it's not challenging those lines up there, but you will continue to see smoke in that area of the fire. Coming further down A21 Road, down towards Westwood, things are looking really good. Interior pockets of heat, nothing threatening the lines, but you will see some residual smoke in there, and that's going to go on for the next few days. Coming across towards Westwood, down the Highway 36 corridor, Duffy Group, Hamilton Mountain area. Again, interior heat. There is some activity that's gone on in there, and you'll continue to see some smoke, and some of those trees and stumps really start to put up some smoke. Nothing's really making large runs, but there is activity in there, and expect to see that continuing over the next couple of days, especially those people who have just repopulated back into the certain areas, and that area is directly off to your east, and so you will expect to see that for the next couple of days. Further to the east of that, though, in that area down in the Susan Creek drainage, Willard Creek, it is holding steady. No real heavy heat in there. No heat signatures that are going to threaten any lines in that area for the next few days at least. And then finally coming down into the far southeast here, Janesville area, there is quite a bit of heat left in here. This is an area that we typically get erratic winds, and therefore we usually get some erratic fire behavior as well. But again, because of that smoke was across the fire, it really dampened and moderated that fire activity. So we did see some activity in there, but nothing made any large runs, didn't threaten the lines, and they were able to get in there and do some good work in there. So we expect to see much of the same tomorrow under the same conditions, and you'll expect to see that kind of activity all through the fire tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Newman. Our next speaker will be Operations Section Chief Mark Brunton.
Good evening. We had some good progress on the fire today. Past couple days with the weather, with the fact that we've been able to just get some of our troops getting the upper hand in certain parts of the fire. We've had a lot of success. So I'll just take you through some of the areas just really briefly. So through the Westwood sector, which is the middle of the fire, the west part of it's still looking really good. The West Shore, again, looking very good with the repopulation in play. And we're just getting a few calls for service for some smokes, non-issues as far as just more nuisance smokes. Over on the peninsula, Hamilton branch, and then Westwood. So Westwood saw repopulation recently, so we've got more folks coming in. The other communities have been repopulated, and so that's, we see more eyes out there. Although we haven't really had any calls for service because we really haven't had any sort of fire activity within those areas. Our firing operation the other day on Highway 36 is, again, well mopped up, very good buffer. There you will see some smoke further deeper into that burn, which is just some interior fuels burning out, just pretty normal, but a very good buffer there to protect from any fires coming from the north. To the south, the Dyer Mountain area, working with our East Zone partners, we've been continuing to mop that up and render that even more safe and close the door there, so it really isolates those communities from any incursion of fire. Moving further to the east, the Duffy Group in this area that is just near Susanville, heavy mop up around a lot of this. Even though you see the red lines on there, it doesn't mean there's any sort of really active fire, flaming front, or anything like that that's threatening the community. It's basically until we have full mop up and good containment and control on it, will we turn the line black. So basically we're in just all around here, just a heavy mop up mode. They're just taking care of any of the hot spots and then improving any of the control lines and so forth. So that's at the point where within the next probably day or two, you'll see a lot more black on the actual map there because we are getting very close to having full extinguishment. Moving in to the east, we have our Janesville branch. That's looking very, very good. We've been working very closely with our partners in the East Zone where the zone split is, so that we've been surging them resources throughout most of the fire, but over here especially along the 395 corridor, a lot of the structures along the corridor. As the fires kind of continue to march across the escarpment, it's not burning down like it was a few nights ago, being pushed by the winds across the highway. It's basically just burning across the escarpment. And we're just monitoring that, and we're continuing to move with it, protect the structures, doing tactical patrol, mop up around there. And then partners in the East Zone have started to put and have very good line that they're punching in up from the bottom all the way to the top on that end. So that'll help stop the southern progression of fire. To the north, we've had a line in place for quite a bit of time, sealing off and isolating the community from any fire. And then on the top of the escarpment, a secondary line, a very large one there. And then as we work down towards Antelope Lake, a good line being put in there. It's constantly being improved, being mopped up. And we're going to continue our operation working with them to just surround this whole part of the fire. And I think we're going to be seeing some really good success with that. We've seen quite a bit there. So as we get that start getting buttoned up, then we're getting another day closer to looking at eventual repopulation. But at this point in time, we're still just making sure it's fully rendered safe so that we don't have any sort of potential for fire, especially with the conditions we've seen, how dry it is and receptive the fuel bed is to any sort of slop overs or spot fire. So that's looking really good overall. Moving to the north of Highway 36 in our Lassen sector, the western part of the fire where we had some incursions of the fire moving out and slipping out a number of days ago, we've been able to put direct line directly on the line, put in a secondary containment line, and that's looking really good. Again, you're seeing a lot of red there, but a lot of that is going to end up being blacked out. Just heavy mop up in the heavy fuels, and so that's looking really good. Where a lot of the work's being concentrated right now is in Division Kilo in this big pocket. So we're in the process of putting line in there. Very difficult terrain to work in with our heavy equipment, and we're utilizing our hand crews in some of the areas where the dozers can't get, and we're starting to put in hose lines and so forth to mop it up. So this whole part of the fire is looking really, really good, and that's been one of our concerns with any westward movement of fire that would get into some very tricky country there. So as we get this more into the mop-up phase, we're starting to look at evaluating, working with our law enforcement partners, eventual repopulation area, but we're not there yet. We're still just making sure that that's really safe, and we're very comfortable before we even recommend that option. Moving into the park, as our fire analyst said, he kind of explained some of the movement of the fire there. It hasn't been as rapid or as large growth as we've seen other parts of the fire the past number of days or weeks. So we've got a lot of good line being put in. We did have one spot over the Park Highway. They were able to pick it up. It's about 6 acres, so that was good news. Division Papa here, they're looking at eventually doing a firing operation. Decided to hold off tonight on it because we were going to do another firing operation. We didn't want to have simultaneous operations going on in one place so close together. Moving outside the park, we have good line from the park boundary all the way down, continuing into our Division Romeo and Tango. And Division Quebec, we started a firing operation 2 nights ago, checked it up, waited for the winds to subside, for the south winds. Now that they're in our favor, the weather conditions are in our favor, we've already started a second phase of the burn operation. This is going to be a multi-day operation to put that burn in. Once that burns in, it puts a nice solid door so that it does not have any incursion of the fire north to affect Highway 44 and all the infrastructure, or to swing back around into Shasta County. So that's a very important operation for us there. Division Romeo and Tango are in a heavy mop-up mode right now, so we're seeing a lot of success. Tango's really looking solid, and Romeo we're just finishing up, and in coming days you'll see that with black line. Just above the park boundary, we've instituted a contingency branch in Shasta County and opening up the old fire lines from the Reading Fire. The people that we have leading that were folks that actually put in the original line from that fire when it occurred, so they're very familiar with that country, and we're using that to open up those lines just as a secondary so that if by chance any fire got out of the park, that we have something to stop and catch that progression of the fire to the north. Overall, we've had some better weather that's been more conducive not only to our fire operations on the ground, but also for our aircraft. We've been able to fly our rotor wing quite a bit, and our fixed wing has been kind of hit and miss as the pockets of opportunity open up to get them up into the air. I think in the next few days with some of our weather that we're going to see some more of those opportunities present themselves, and we'll take full advantage of that to meet and achieve our priorities.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to introduce Lassen County Sheriff Dean Groudon.
Good evening, everyone. Dean Groudon, Sheriff of Lassen County. I want to start off by reviewing some evacuation orders and warnings and some changes that occurred today. The first one is related to Westwood, Clear Creek, and Pinetown. So at 11 a.m., that order for those areas was reduced to a warning. That means that people can return to those areas. We still want them to be diligent, be observant, be ready to leave if things were to change. As far as we've had a lot of questions today about which routes are open to people to return to Westwood. So right now, Highway 36 remains closed, but people can travel Highway 44 and then take A21 south into Westwood. People coming from Reading can travel Highway 44 and do the same, turn on A21. Highway 32 from Chico is open to Highway 36, and then 36 is open between Chester and Westwood. So you have a number of routes available for you depending on which way you left when the mandatory evacuation orders were issued. If you have questions about that, I would advise you to check with Caltrans and the California Highway Patrol related to highway changes. We have had some calls related to fire visible and smoke visible along A21, and that is going to be the case. That area is being patrolled by CAL FIRE, and we ask that you don't stop on A21. You know, just keep the highway open and keep traveling. If there is an issue out there, CAL FIRE will detect it and deal with it. A couple other things related to Westwood in that area. Seneca Hospital is open. It opened yesterday. And again, 36 is open between Westwood and Chester. And we did place some dumpsters at the visitor center at 3rd and Ash to help people to dispose of spoiled food. We ask that you double bag that and then take it to those dumpsters. In Westwood, when it appeared, fairly imminent that the fire might enter the town, we did work with the owners of animals, and we removed a lot of animals from Westwood. Those animals are at the Lassen County Animal Shelter at 472000 Johnsonville Road, and tomorrow they are open from 9 to 3:30. And the phone number there is 530-257-9200. So once again, if we coordinated with you to remove your animals from Westwood and we didn't bring them to you, they're going to be at the shelter, and that number is 257-9200. We reduced from an order to a warning in the area west of Susanville and south of Highway 36. The primary areas there are that Devil's Corral area into the city limits of Susanville along Highway 36, as well as Cheney Creek Road, Bower Road. The only road out in that area off of Highway 36 that still is under the mandatory evacuation order is Corver Road. So that Corver Road area, south of Devil's Corral is still in an order. We also reduced one area in Janesville. It's on the east side of Highway 395, and it's from A3 on the north end to that intersection of 395 and Thunder Mountain Road on the south end. That includes Lake Crest, Hemp Hill Road, and Bleckenstaff Road, and that vicinity there. But for full details, I ask that people log on to community.zonehaven.com. And right now, we're getting a number of calls at our dispatch center related to evacuation orders and warnings and questions if people can go home. I really recommend that people log on to that site. Our dispatch center, just because we're devoting a lot of time and effort to the fire doesn't mean that all the other law enforcement calls for service haven't stopped. So our dispatch center that already is short-staffed is just they're getting slammed with calls. I'd prefer and I'd appreciate if people look to those zone maps and use those for those answers. We change those maps when we make changes, either issuing orders, reducing orders, or eliminating orders altogether. So please don't call our dispatch center unless you have to. And as far as other areas, I know people are anxious to get home. We meet on a regular basis with the team, and we're going to continue to monitor, the fire's progress, monitor, the successes the team is seeing, and when it becomes safe to allow additional people home, we will. Now, based on my own observations the past couple of days, I want to bring up one topic, and that is travel. Right now I've been driving these routes myself checking in with our law enforcement partners that are up here helping us, checking in with fire personnel. And one thing I've been seeing is a lot of people, in my opinion, are driving far too fast on our highways right now. The highways, it's smoky. Highway 395 is very smoky. Highway 36 is smoky. A lot of these areas, you know, there's a lot of smoke, limited visibility. So if you're traveling in these areas, you should have your headlights on all the time. I ask that you know, slow down. Just drive at a slower pace. And of course, yield to fire and other emergency traffic. If you get in an area like 395, we've had it closed multiple times, or like that 821 area, or, you know, there are a variety of areas that could get very smoky at any point in time. If it gets very smoky, I recommend you slow down, make sure your headlights on, and turn your hazard lights on, just to increase your visibility and everyone's safety. I want to thank all the fire personnel and other first responders working to protect our communities. You know, today, this morning, when we were able to change that order and let some people go back to Westwood, you know, obviously they were very happy. And a lot of those people have been there, you know, about 2.5 weeks. And, you know, they wanted to express their appreciation, you know, for everyone helping work on this fire. So I think it's very important that we continue to focus on the positive and the positive things that are happening in our community right now as we face this fire. And lastly, I just want to thank the community for your continued support and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Next, I'd like to introduce a video from the Plumas National Forest. Kirsten Kaiser, Agency Administrator.
Good evening. This is Kirsten Kaiser, Agency Administrator for the Plumas National Forest. Chris Carlton, Forest Supervisor, and then also Agency Administrator, will be returning to our next public meeting. This message has been recorded earlier in the day. I want to begin tonight just expressing my sympathy for those who have lost so many in our communities. Also, I want to let you know that forest closure orders that will be discussed tonight are also in effect on the Plumas National Forest. However, we will work with people to provide an exemption to ensure that the 4 campgrounds that we have been talking about remain open to evacuees. Those 4 campgrounds are Meadow Camp, Rock Creek, Deans Valley Campground in the Meadow Valley area, and Red Bridge Campground. Again, we will work to provide exemptions to provide those to local people. Again, we do not have trash service, and of course, fires are not permitted. I want to thank you guys for your cooperation, and also to let you know that we continue to work really hard with our partners and our friends and our communities, and our primary objective of putting this fire out and to keep people safe. Thank you and have a good evening.
Our next speaker will be Federal Agency Representative Jay Luscher.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank all the firefighters for all the hard work that they've put in that allowed some more residents to go home today. Mark Brunton talked about the mop-up that's going on. It's the hard, grueling, not so glamorous work that the fire crews have to put in. It's the last piece of the puzzle in order to let folks go home. It means digging in the dirt, getting a lot of mud and grub on your face, and those folks get up every day and keep going out there to make sure that the fire is secured so everyone can go home. It's a lot of hard work, and we really appreciate it. We want to remind folks as they go home that the federal lands in and around your housing areas are still closed. This is due to the fire conditions and fire crews continuing to put work in. All that mop-up work still continues. They're also working to protect those special places. As we heard from the fire behavior analysts, fire is still moving through Lassen National Park, and I'm sure that's a concern to folks, but the crews are working hard to find the best lines that they can in order to stop the fire progression to the north. Finally, we want to talk about the resilience of the community and thank everyone for their support, for all the crews, for each other, for your friends, families, and neighbors. This support is critical as we move forward. We still have a long road ahead, and we really appreciate all your compassion and empathy for each other and for all the crews on the line. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Chief. For our final speaker this evening, I'd like to introduce Incident Commander Billy C.
Good evening. 40 days ago, the Dixie incident started July 13th down in the Feather River Canyon on Highway 70 in Butte County. Fast forward 40 days later, we're at 724,000 acres plus. We're at 38% containment as of today. Our firefighters have been working extremely hard trying to protect all your properties and your valuables that are out there, including all the natural resources. This incident's created significant damage to multiple communities. We've had multiple evacuations, currently with over 5,000 people still evacuated. The firefighters are working extremely hard to reduce that number each and every day. Obviously, today was a big success day for all our workforce that's been out on the line, being able to watch the people go back home in Westwood. We're going to continue to work hard. We're going to continue to improve our containment lines out on 395, getting the folks back into Janesville. We're going to continue to work hard in the mineral area, keeping that fire out of the Mill Creek drainage, and getting good containment lines so we can reopen Highway 36 and get all the folks back in the Tehama County area back in their homes safely. That's our goal, and that's our mission that we're working towards. I can't promise you when that's going to be, but over the next few days, we're working extremely hard to maintain what we have and include additional success each and every day to get you home sooner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And next, we'll move to the question and answer portion from your questions submitted on Facebook and YouTube. To handle our first round of questions, I'd like to invite back up Operations Section Chief Mark Brunton.
Okay, I'll be able to answer a few of the questions regarding mainly it's on this portion of the fire. So an update on the Childs Meadows, Highway 32, Mineral and Mill Creek area. So although you do see the red in this area, those communities are within that general area. This is, as I said earlier, heavy mop up. Got resources all throughout. The Highway 89 corridor was firing operation a few days ago. That's well burned in, mop up stage. So the only really active fire is well deep into this pocket that I was explaining earlier that we're going direct on and taking action on. So if one were to look up and see from down below, yeah, they're going to see potentially occasional flame, not a flaming front. They're going to see smoke in that area, certainly. But as far as them direct threat to those communities, there are not. Those communities are protected. And once we get a good containment on that area, then we'll start looking at working with our law enforcement partners to go through the process for a repopulation. So we're not there yet until we get this secured and finish up our mop-up in this particular area. So those communities are looking very good, and they are safe. The next question is crews watching hotspots in the Warners Valley. So I personally was up there today going through that community. Yeah, there was quite a bit of devastation. There are a lot of structures that were saved by personnel when the fire went through there. It went through it was a tremendous wall of fire, active fire activity. We had crews engaged in the fight for that community and those structures. So there was quite a bit of devastation and heavy timber and fuels. They did a really good job. They saved a number of structures, did a fantastic job with that. So in surveying that area, again, there are, as there will be in this type of fuel type, a lot of areas that will smolder for many days and probably months to come until really heavy rain or snow comes. There's just a lot of large stump holes and so forth. But we've had heavy patrols throughout the past week or so since that occurred. Those folks have done a really good job of mopping up around the structures that remained, those that were destroyed. So I've found very few signs of any smokes in there. We do have some patrol that do go through there. However, we have a very large incident with very limited resources, and we've had to surge our resources to other parts of the fire, including the east zone. And by doing so, we just unfortunately cannot have a fire engine in every particular spot of this over 700,000 acres. So we take areas, we prioritize, especially when we even get it not only past the firefight, but into the mop-up stage. And when we're doing that, we have to do the same thing. We have to use our resources wisely. So they have been in there, and we will continue to patrol. After I came out of there, the few smokes that we saw, they're non-factor. They're not threatening the lines. They are, again, just the typical hotspots you're going to see in this type of fuel type, and we're seeing throughout the entire fire. But no, the Warners Valley, that is, as far as we're concerned, is safe. Now, as far as the repopulation effort, there still is work to be done. There's still a lot of hazards involved. And again, that's going to be one of those things that we will work with our law enforcement partners. And when we deem that it's fire safe from our standpoint, then it goes through the rest of the process of the repopulation. And then the third question I've got is there a fire line threatening Highway 32 at 36? And essentially, it's the same story as what I've just given here. It does, those intersections do come within this general area, the plateau there. And again, same story. If one were to be there on that intersection and look, they're going to see smoke up on a lot of the elevated areas, some flame, but for the most part, no, there's no threat. There's no push of fire extending in this direction or pushing towards those roadways. Really, the whole Highway 36 corridor, at best, there's no flaming front. There's no push of fire on there. It's just simply in a very heavy mop-up phase, but one we need to conduct and finish before we feel comfortable advising our law enforcement partners that it's safe enough to open those roadways.
Received obviously numerous law enforcement related questions, and to handle those, I'd like to invite back up Lassen County Sheriff Dean Grant.
All right, so I'm glad people asked a couple of these. These are things I should have covered, but power in Westwood. So Westwood, Pinetown, Clear Creek do have power. The primary transmission lines that service those communities were damaged with a fire north of Highway 36. There were some poles damaged. So that power coming from that route or that system had been shut off, but Mudd was able to work with PG&E and bring power in from the Hat Creek line by way of A21. So that is how Westwood, Clear Creek, and Pinetown are receiving power now. Mudd is going to be working on repairs over the next week or two and hope to have the primary transmission lines to Westwood and those communities repaired. But there is power. Another question that's come up is, the status of refrigerators and freezers. So far, the people that have returned have found, the first outage I think was about 24 to 26 hours. The second one was around 12 or 13. For those periods of time, if those freezers and things were kept closed, people are seeing, good outcomes when they've gone home. They're seeing that their freezers are still frozen. Of course, they're finding some food in their refrigerators has perished, and they're dumping that at those dumpsters we've provided at the visitor center. But the power, when it was turned off to Westwood, wasn't because the power burned across the lines and caused any kind of arcing or shut off. It was the utility companies were informed and in communication with the teams and were able to shut off the power, so it was a cleaner shut off. So up to this point, we've had no reports of damaged appliances. So the next question is the area of Janesville above the rest stop. So I'm guessing, above the rest stop on 395 off Hicks and Ponderosa, going to be downrated to an evacuation warning anytime soon. So like I said earlier, we meet with a team each day. We evaluate those areas, obviously based heavily on their input because they understand the fire much better than I do. But as soon as those areas are safe to repopulate, we will reduce that to a warning. I wish I could give you an estimate, but I really can't. Those decisions are made day to day. We are, unfortunately, those people that lost their homes out in that area, we are working with state OES to try to bring some personnel up to do hazardous materials removal. We want to start taking those steps as rapidly as we can so you can revisit your home site. The next question is about the participation of the other sheriff's offices, Tehama, Shasta, Plumas, Butte, and of course everyone understands that this is a 5-county fire. Butte County has been very involved from the beginning. They have someone working up here at our camp with us, participating in all those meetings. Plumas County obviously is super active in it. They have, there's a camp in Quincy, and each day we have virtual meetings where we participate and communicate, both the two teams as well as the various sheriff's offices. And in those meetings, Shasta, Tehama also participate in those meetings. So every sheriff's office has been touched by this fire, or the sheriffs from every county that's been touched this fire, is actively involved in planning and so on. So, and then just in closing, same on that topic, we have a number of mutual aid units in Lassen and Plumas counties right now from all over California. Today, I went out and met at our briefing station, our command post, deputies from Sonoma County. The city of Tiburon has officers up here, and of course our normal partners, Forest Service, BLM, CDCR, CHP. But just go out of your way, please. If you see those officers working in Lassen and Plumas counties as mutual aid officers, I'd appreciate if you just go out of the way to thank them for being in our area and helping us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. I would like to, we have one more question, it looks like. No, I was going to have that, sorry. We do have one more question this evening, and I think it's a safety issue that we need to address. So I'll invite up Operations Section Chief Mark Brunton to handle this. The question is, how can citizens it's asking about putting out spot fires. Obviously, we don't advise folks to do so, but what do you advise folks who see spot fires to do?
So when we start repopulating an area, this is something we typically see when an area is burned through, no matter what type of fuel type it's in. This happens to be in a timber fuel type, which does hold the heat longer, and you're going to see these smokes, as I indicated earlier, for a longer period of time. What we advise is we do have resources available that are mopping up in various other areas that make the call in and just give the dispatch information regarding where it's located and so forth. We'd rather we take care of that issue for you because there's a lot of hazards, a lot of hidden hazards that the general public aren't aware of in mopping up or just simply putting water into a stump hole or something like that. It's things that we train our firefighters on and why they wear protective equipment, because there are things such as what we call ash pits that you don't see. It looks like it's stable ground. You step on it. It's actually a full pit full of ash that may have been from a stump that is just burned down, and they step into it and they can receive some very extensive, severe burns that would need to be treated at a burn center. And we don't want anybody to be in that kind of situation. So we're the best people to be able to mitigate that factor, and we're happy to do so. It is, again, very large fire. We do have some limited resources. It may take some time to do so. Unless you see active fire flames that are actually burning and burning towards a structure or something of that nature, then definitely that's one thing. But simply you are going to see some smoldering stumps, smoldering logs, that sort of thing, and that'll be something that's a painstaking, slow process that we are going to be going through, and we eventually will be plugging away and taking care of those issues. So the number one we take care of is if it's a direct threat to life or property are the ones, and that's how we prioritize and then work away. You will see stumps burning well deep into the interior in the black. Those typically are not going to be something that's going to reignite, throw embers that are going to cause greater fire, because those typically are nowhere near our fire line, or the line between the burned and unburned. We work from that unburned into the burn in depth when we do mop up, and that's the reason why. So you will see some of that. You may be driving along the highway eventually as they reopen and see burning stump well into the black. That's going to be unfortunately kind of what you'll be seeing for the next coming weeks and maybe even months until we can fully extinguish those. It's just, like I said, a very long process. But what we do suggest is that people not take action on that they rather call us for us to come out and take care of that issue.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. That's going to conclude our update for this evening. For those of you whose questions we weren't able to answer on the air, our public information staff is working diligently to answer those in the comments for you as well. Our next scheduled incident briefing will be Tuesday, August 24th